The gunshot shattered the stillness of the small Montana ranch like glass breaking, sending Nora Dalton's heart racing and her hands clutching the worn wooden table. She knew what it meant. Her husband Howard was drunk again, shooting at imaginary bandits or coyotes that weren't there. The year was 1878, and Nora's world was unraveling thread by thread like the frayed hem of her only good dress. "Nora," Howard's voice bellowed from outside, slurred and angry. "Where's the rest of the money?" She wiped her hands on her apron, fighting the urge to hide in the root cellar. At 23, Nora had been married to Howard for 5 years, and those years felt like 20. The young bride with dreams of a loving home had vanished, replaced by a woman who flinched at sudden movements and hid small coins in the lining of her boots. "There isn't any," she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. "We used the last to buy feed for the animals." The door banged open, and Howard Dalton filled the frame, unshaven and red-eyed. Once handsome, at 32 he looked a decade older, his face lined with bitterness and whiskey. "Found a solution to that," he announced, a smirk playing at his lips as he tossed a small pouch onto the table. Coins spilled out, more money than they'd had in months. Nora looked at the silver, dread pooling in her stomach. "What did you sell, that useless mare of yours?" "Got $15 and a bottle of the good stuff." He pulled a whiskey bottle from his jacket, the amber liquid sloshing inside. That horse was eating more than she was worth. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. Willow, her dapple gray mare, had been a gift from her father before he died. The gentle horse was the last connection to her family, the only thing that was truly hers. "You had no right," she whispered, fingers trembling as she gathered the coins. "Willow wasn't yours to sell." Howard's face darkened. "Everything here is mine, including you." He took a long pull from the bottle. "Rollins gave me a fair price. She'll be pulling his wagon starting tomorrow." Tears burned behind Nora's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Howard enjoyed her tears too much. "Who's Rollins?" "New fellow bought the old Jessup place." Howard dropped heavily into a chair. "Got money by the looks of it. Paid cash, no haggling." Nora turned away, busying herself at the stove, her mind racing. Willow was gone. The thought hollowed her out like a mining shaft, dark and empty. That horse had been her solace, her friend, her escape when Howard's moods turned black. "I'm heading to town," Howard announced, pushing himself up. "Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him, and Nora sank to the floor, finally allowing her tears to fall. She wept until her throat was raw, until the shadows lengthened across the cabin floor. Then, wiping her face, she stood. She would find Willow. She would talk to this Rollins, beg if necessary. She couldn't lose the last piece of her heart. Dawn broke with golden fingers stretching across the Montana plains as Nora set out on foot toward the old Jessup place, 3 miles east. Her boots, the only sturdy thing she owned, kicked up dust with each determined step. The land was awakening, wildflowers dotting the prairie like stars, but Nora barely noticed the beauty around her. The Jessup Ranch came into view as the sun climbed higher, a modest house with a new coat of paint, a large barn, and several corrals. The property looked rejuvenated, no longer the abandoned shell it had been for years. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the sound of hammering echoed across the yard. As Nora approached, she spotted a man on the roof of a small outbuilding, driving nails with practiced swings. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his skin bronzed from the sun. He paused, sensing her presence, and looked down. "Can I help you, madam?" His voice carried easily across the yard. "I'm looking for Mr. Rollins," Nora called back, shielding her eyes from the sun. The man set down his hammer and made his way to the edge of the roof, then climbed down the ladder with fluid grace. As he approached, Nora could see he was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 28 or 30, with striking blue eyes and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his shirt. "I'm Heath Wayland," he said, wiping his hands on a rag before offering one to her. "Most folks just call me Heath." Nora hesitated before taking his hand. "I thought I was told Mr. Rollins bought this property." Heath smiled, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Abraham Rollins is my business partner. He handles the paperwork, I handle the actual ranching." He studied her face. "You look familiar, madam. Have we met?" "No," Nora said, withdrawing her hand. "I'm Nora Dalton. My husband sold you a horse yesterday, a dapple gray mare. Recognition dawned in Heath's eyes. Mrs. Dalton, yes, I remember your husband. Something in his tone suggested the memory wasn't pleasant. The mare is in the North Corral. Fine animal. She's mine, Nora blurted, then flushed at her boldness. That is, she was given to me by my father. My husband had no right to sell her. Heath's expression softened. I see. He gestured toward the corral. Would you like to see her? Nora nodded, relief washing over her that Willow was still here, that this man wasn't immediately dismissing her. She followed Heath across the yard, noting the improvements already made to the property: repaired fencing, fresh hay in the stables, new water troughs. In the corral, Willow stood with her head down, looking forlorn. When she spotted Nora, the mare whinnied and trotted over, pushing her nose against Nora's outstretched hand. She knows you, Heath observed, watching the reunion. We've been together since she was a foal, Nora said, stroking Willow's neck, her throat tight. Mr. Wayland, I know you paid good money for her, but I can earn enough to buy her back. I'll do anything. Heath leaned against the fence post, studying Nora with those penetrating blue eyes. Your husband seemed mighty eager to sell, said the horse wasn't worth feeding. Anger flashed through Nora. He wanted whiskey money, that's all he cares about anymore. As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. A woman didn't speak ill of her husband to strangers, it wasn't proper, but Heath merely nodded as if confirming something he'd suspected. Mrs. Dalton, I won't keep a horse that was sold without its rightful owner's consent, he said finally. The mare is yours. Nora stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. I can't accept charity, I'll pay you back every cent. It's not charity, Heath said. It's doing what's right. He paused. Though I do have a proposition for you. I could use help around the ranch, cooking, mending, that sort of thing. My partner and I are hopeless at domestic matters. He named a fair wage, adding, you could work off the cost of the mare and earn a bit extra besides. Nora's mind raced. The thought of regular work, of earning her own money, was tempting beyond words, but Howard would never allow it. She began, then stopped as the sound of approaching hoofbeats reached them. Howard Dalton rode into the yard on his gelding, his face thunderous. He dismounted unsteadily, and Nora's heart sank. He'd been drinking already, though it wasn't yet noon. So this is where you snuck off to, he snarled, stalking toward her. Thought you'd go behind my back, did you? Heath stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Nora. Mr. Dalton, your wife was just checking on her horse. Her horse, Howard spat. I sold that nag fair and square, you paid for it, it's yours. There seems to be some confusion, Heath said calmly. I understood the mare belonged to Mrs. Dalton. Howard's hand moved to his belt where he kept his knife. You calling me a liar, Cowboy? I'm saying there's been a misunderstanding, Heath replied, his stance relaxed but alert. I'd prefer not to complete the sale. You already did, Howard sneered. Money's spent. He grabbed Nora's arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. We're leaving. Now, Nora tried to pull away, but Howard's grip tightened. Howard, please let go of her. Heath's voice had dropped, a dangerous edge to it now. Mind your own business, Howard growled. She's my wife. She's not your property, Heath said, his eyes hard as flint, and you're hurting her. For a moment, the three stood frozen in a tableau of tension, then Howard released Nora with a shove that sent her stumbling. Fine, keep the damn horse. But don't come crying to me when there's no food on the table. He turned to Nora. You want to stay with your precious horse. Stay, see if I care. He mounted his gelding with some difficulty and wheeled the animal around, spurring it harder than necessary as he rode away. Nora stood trembling, humiliation burning her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. Heath's expression was grim as he watched Howard disappear down the road. You have nothing to apologize for, Mrs. Dalton. He turned to her, his face softening. Are you all right? The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Yes, she managed, though the bruise forming on her arm told a different story. Heath seemed to make a decision. My offer stands. Work here, earn your wages. The mare stays with you. He paused. And if you need a place to stay, there's a small cabin near the creek that's empty. Nora looked back in the direction Howard had gone, then at Willow, who watched her with liquid brown eyes. In that moment, the choice seemed both impossible and inevitable. I'll need to get my things, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Heath nodded. You'll ride, Willow, but I'll come with you, just to make sure everything goes smoothly. As they prepared Willow for riding, Heath saddled his own stallion, a powerful chestnut with a white blaze. He swung up into the saddle with easy grace, then looked down at Nora. Your husband's right about one thing, he said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. That mare is yours, but until we get this sorted, you'll ride mine. Nora looked up at him, startled, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt the ghost of a smile touch her own lips. Thank you, she said quietly, and in those two words was a universe of gratitude that went beyond horses and rides home. Heath tipped his hat. Let's go get your belongings, Mrs. Dalton. The ride back to her homestead was tense but uneventful. Howard's gelding was nowhere to be seen. He'd likely continued to town and the welcoming embrace of the saloon. Nora moved through the small cabin like a ghost, gathering her meager possessions. 2 dresses, her mother's quilt, a wooden hairbrush, a small box of treasures that included her parents' wedding rings. Heath waited outside, respectful of her privacy yet close enough to intervene if needed. When she emerged with her bundle, he helped secure it to Willow's saddle without comment on how little she had to show for 5 years of marriage. As they rode away, Nora didn't look back at the cabin that had been both haven and prison. Instead, she fixed her eyes forward, toward the Jessup Ranch the Wayland Ranch now, and whatever uncertain future awaited her there. The cabin by the creek proved to be a one-room affair with a stone fireplace, sturdy walls, and a small porch facing the water. It was simple but sound, with a bed, table, 2 chairs, and a trunk for storage. Heath explained that it had been built for the former owner's aging father, who had passed on before ever occupying it. It needs a woman's touch, he said as Nora surveyed the space, but it's yours for as long as you need it. That night, alone in the cabin, Nora wept again, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of safety. The sound of the creek outside became a lullaby, and she slept more deeply than she had in years. The next morning brought clarity and doubt in equal measure. Nora rose with the sun, washed in the creek, and donned her best dress, a faded blue calico that had once been pretty. She braided her chestnut hair and pinned it up, determined to look presentable for her first day of work. As she approached the main house, the aroma of coffee greeted her, along with the sight of Heath attempting to prepare breakfast. He looked up when she entered, relief evident on his face. Mrs. Dalton, you're a sight for sore eyes. I was about to poison myself with my own cooking. Despite herself, Nora smiled. I can fix that, if you'll show me where everything is. The morning passed in a flurry of domestic activity. Nora took stock of the pantry, prepared a proper breakfast of biscuits, bacon, and eggs, and began a list of supplies needed from town. Heath ate with undisguised appreciation, complimenting her cooking until she blushed. Mr. Wayland, she said as she cleared the plates, I've been thinking about our arrangement. Heath, he corrected gently. If we're going to be working together, you might as well use my given name. Nora hesitated, then nodded. Heath, I want to be clear about my situation. I haven't left my husband, not officially, I just needed. She trailed off, unsure how to articulate the complex tangle of fear, hope, and necessity that had brought her here. You needed safety, Heath finished for her, and respect, he met her eyes. Mrs. Dalton, your marriage is your business. I'm not offering judgment, just employment and a place to stay while you figure things out. Nora, she said quietly, if I'm to call you Heath. He smiled, and something warm unfurled in Nora's chest, a feeling so long absent she barely recognized it as happiness. Nora it is, Heath agreed. Now I have to check the north pasture fence. Will you be all right here? My partner Rollins should arrive tomorrow. He's a good man, bit older than me, very proper. You'll like him. After Heath left, Nora threw herself into work, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of domestic chores. She swept and dusted, washed windows, and assessed what linens needed mending. The house was solidly built but bachelor kept, in need of a thorough cleaning and organizing. By late afternoon, she had transformed the kitchen and parlor, giving the rooms a warmth they had previously lacked. When Heath returned, dusty and tired from fence repairs, he stopped in the doorway, staring at the changes. I hope you don't mind, Nora said, suddenly uncertain. I took the liberty of rearranging some things. Mind, Heath repeated, a slow smile spreading across his face. Nora, this place hasn't looked this good since. Well, ever. He hung his hat on a newly installed peg by the door. It's starting to feel like a home. The word home hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Nora busied herself at the stove, where stew simmered in a cast iron pot. I found venison in the cold room, she explained. I hope that's all right. More than all right, Heath assured her, washing up at the basin she'd prepared. I shot that buck 3 days ago but hadn't gotten around to cooking it properly. They ate together at the newly scrubbed table, the conversation flowing more easily than Nora would have expected. Heath told her about growing up in Pennsylvania, about his time as a cavalry scout during the war despite being barely 16 when he enlisted, about his dreams of building a successful horse ranch in Montana Territory. Rollins and I plan to breed and train horses, he explained. Not just any horses, the best, quarter horses for working cattle, thoroughbreds for racing, good solid stock for everyday use. Is that why you bought Willow? Nora asked. For breeding, Heath hesitated. Partly, she's a fine mare with good lines. But truthfully, when your husband approached me with her, I could see she was special, well cared for despite his neglect of everything else. He set down his fork, and I didn't like the way he spoke about you. Nora's eyes widened. He spoke about me, nothing specific, Heath said carefully. Just the way he referred to you, like you were another piece of property he could trade away if the price was right. His jaw tightened. It didn't sit well with me. Nora stared down at her plate, a complex mixture of emotions churning within her. Howard wasn't always like this, she said softly. When we married, he was kind, ambitious. He had plans to build a cattle empire. She twisted her wedding ring, a plain gold band that had grown loose as she'd lost weight over the difficult years. Then the drought came and the cattle fever. We lost almost everything. He started drinking. She trailed off, uncomfortable sharing such personal details, yet somehow needing Heath to understand. Loss changes people, Heath said after a moment. Some rise above it, some don't. He reached across the table, his fingers lightly touching hers. But Nora, nothing justifies how he treats you. The touch was brief, proper, yet Nora felt it like a spark through her entire body. She withdrew her hand, confused by her reaction. It's getting late, she said, standing to clear the dishes. I should head back to the cabin. Heath nodded, respecting her withdrawal. I'll walk you. It's dark and there are coyotes about. The night was clear, stars strewn across the sky like diamond dust. As they walked, the only sounds were their footsteps, the distant call of an owl and the gentle gurgle of the creek. At the cabin door, Nora turned to thank Heath, finding him closer than she'd realized. I'll come by at dawn, he said, his voice low. There's a mare about to foal in the south pasture. Could use an extra set of hands if you're willing. Of course, Nora agreed, oddly breathless. Good night, Heath. Good night, Nora. He tipped his hat and was gone, melting into the darkness like a shadow. Inside, Nora leaned against the door, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't or wouldn't articulate. This feeling, this awareness of Heath as a man rather than just an employer, was dangerous. She was still married, still bound by vows she had taken before God, no matter how Howard had broken his. Yet as she prepared for bed, Nora couldn't help comparing the two men. Howard's increasing cruelty versus Heath's steady kindness, Howard's destructive selfishness versus Heath's thoughtful consideration. Stop it, she told herself firmly, blowing out the lamp. You're being foolish. But in the darkness, as sleep claimed her, it was Heath's blue eyes and dimpled smile that followed her into dreams. The mare's labor began just before dawn, and Nora arrived at the stables to find Heath already there, his sleeves rolled up, speaking soothingly to the distressed animal. She's a first-time mother, he explained as Nora joined him in the stall. Nervous. Together they worked, Heath guiding the foal's forelegs as they appeared, Nora keeping the mare calm with gentle words and strokes. When the foal finally slid into the world, a spindly-legged colt with a white star on his forehead, both humans were sweaty and exhausted, but exhilarated. He's beautiful, Nora whispered as the newborn struggled to stand, falling and trying again with stubborn determination. That he is, Heath agreed, watching the colt finally gain his feet and wobble toward his mother's milk. Life beginning, there's nothing quite like it. Their eyes met over the miracle they'd witnessed, and something shifted between them, a deepening of connection, an unspoken understanding. In that moment, helping bring new life into the world, they were partners in the purest sense. The spell was broken by the sound of a wagon approaching. Heath straightened. That'll be Rollins with the supplies. Abraham Rollins proved to be exactly as Heath had described: proper, meticulous, and older, with silver-streaked hair and wire-rimmed spectacles. He treated Nora with formal courtesy, addressing her as Mrs. Dalton and thanking her for bringing civilization to this bachelor establishment. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine developed. Nora rose early, tended to her horse, then walked to the main house to prepare breakfast. She spent her days cooking, cleaning, mending, and helping with the lighter ranch chores, collecting eggs, feeding chickens, assisting with the horses. In the evenings, she would return to her cabin, sometimes accompanied by Heath or Rollins, sometimes alone. Howard did not come for her. Word from town, brought by the occasional visitor, suggested he was on an extended drinking binge, boasting to anyone who would listen that he was better off without that ungrateful woman. Each day, Nora grew stronger physically from the healthy food and honest work, emotionally from the absence of fear and the presence of respect. Her cheeks filled out, her step lightened, and sometimes she caught herself humming as she worked, and each day her awareness of Heath Wayland deepened. She noticed the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the gentleness of his hands with the horses, the respect with which he treated everyone, from Rollins to the Mexican stable hand, Miguel. She noticed how he never spoke over her, how he asked for her opinion on matters ranging from recipes to ranch decisions, how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Most dangerously, she noticed how her pulse quickened when he entered a room, how she found excuses to be near him, how she treasured the sound of his laughter. It was wrong, she knew. She was a married woman, bound by law and God's word. Yet in her heart, a voice whispered that a true marriage was more than a ceremony and a certificate. It was a union of respect, care, and love. By that measure, had she ever truly been married to Howard at all? The turning point came on a Sunday afternoon in early June. Rollins had gone to town for church services, but Heath had stayed behind, claiming work that couldn't wait. Nora, who had prepared a cold lunch for them, found him not working but sitting by the creek, skipping stones across the water. "I thought you had urgent business," she said, setting the basket beside him. Heath looked up, a boyish guilt on his face. "I did, thinking is serious business." He patted the grassy bank beside him. "Join me," Nora hesitated, then settled next to him, smoothing her skirt. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" "The future." Heath picked up another stone, examining it before sending it skipping 5 times across the water. "Rollins wants to expand by the Carson property to the east. It would double our grazing land." "That sounds like a good thing," Nora observed, unpacking the lunch: cold chicken, bread, cheese, and apple pie. "It is, but it means more work, more hands to hire, more responsibility." Heath accepted a plate from her. "And it means I need to decide if this is truly where I want to put down roots." Nora's hands stilled. "You're thinking of leaving?" "No," Heath said quickly. "Just making sure I'm staying for the right reasons." He looked at her, his gaze direct. "Nora, there's something I need to say, and I hope you won't take offense." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Go on." "These past weeks, having you here." He set aside his plate, choosing his words carefully. "You've brought life to this place, not just with the cleaning and cooking, though God knows that's appreciated. It's you, your strength, your kindness, the way you face each day with courage despite everything." Nora couldn't look away from his face, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. "I find myself looking forward to seeing you each morning," Heath continued. "I find myself thinking about you when you're not around. I find myself—" He broke off, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not expressing this well." "You're expressing it perfectly," Nora whispered, her voice trembling. "Too perfectly." Heath reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I know your situation. I know you're married. I know this is impossible." His fingers were warm around hers. But I needed you to know that if circumstances were different, if you were free, I would court you properly. I would try to win your heart. Tears pricked Nora's eyes. Heath, you don't need to say anything, he assured her. I don't expect anything. I just couldn't keep pretending that what I feel for you is simply friendship or employer to employee. Nora looked down at their joined hands, at her wedding ring gleaming dully in the sunlight. I would be lying if I said I didn't feel something too, she admitted softly, but I made vows. I know, Heath said, and I respect that. I respect you too much to ask you to break them. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. I just wanted the truth between us. They ate in silence after that, the confession hanging in the air between them. It should have been awkward, but instead Nora felt a strange peace. The truth had been acknowledged, boundaries established. Nothing would happen, nothing could happen, but at least they were honest. As they packed up the remains of lunch, Heath stopped suddenly, his head tilted. Riders coming, he said, his expression changing from relaxed to alert. Stay here. He strode toward the main house, and Nora followed despite his instruction, a sense of foreboding gripping her. 3 men on horseback approached, and leading them was Howard, his face flushed with drink even at this early hour. There she is, Howard called, pointing at Nora. Told you boys she was shacking up with the horse breeder. The 2 men with him, rough-looking fellows Nora recognized as regulars from the saloon, snickered. One spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. Heath stepped forward, his stance casual but his eyes hard. Mr. Dalton, gentlemen. What can I do for you? You can give me back my wife, Howard slurred, and my money for that horse you stole. I didn't steal anything, Heath replied evenly, and Mrs. Dalton is here of her own free will, working for honest wages. Howard dismounted, swaying slightly. Working, is that what they call it now? He leered at Nora. Come on, wife, time to go home where you belong. Nora stepped closer to Heath, fear and anger warring within her. I'm not going anywhere with you, Howard. The hell you're not. Howard lunged forward, but Heath moved between them. That's enough, Heath said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Mrs. Dalton has made her choice. I suggest you respect it. Howard's hand went to his gun, and in a blur of movement, Heath disarmed him, twisting the weapon from Howard's grasp with a swift, practiced motion. The 2 men with Howard reached for their own firearms, but Heath's voice stopped them. I wouldn't, he said quietly, now holding Howard's gun. I was a sharpshooter in the war. I can put a bullet through both of you before either clears leather. The men froze, assessing the situation. Now, Heath continued, here's what's going to happen. You gentlemen are going to turn around and ride back to town. Mr. Dalton, you're going to sober up and think very carefully about your next move, because if you come here threatening Mrs. Dalton again, I won't be so restrained. You can't keep my wife, Howard spat. She's not property, Heath replied. She's a person with the right to choose where she lives and works, and she's chosen not to be with a man who sells her possessions for whiskey and puts his hands on her in anger. Howard glared at them both, hatred and humiliation burning in his bloodshot eyes. This isn't over, he growled, stumbling back to his horse. His companions helped him mount, and with final dark looks the 3 men rode away. When they were out of sight, Nora's knees gave way. Heath caught her, supporting her with an arm around her waist. Are you all right? He asked, concern etching his features. Yes, she said, though she was shaking. Thank you. Heath's expression was grim. He'll be back. I know, Nora whispered. And next time he might bring more men or the sheriff. The sheriff won't interfere, Heath said. Bill Harker's a fair man. He knows the situation. He guided Nora to the porch steps where they sat side by side. But you're right that Howard won't give up easily. Nora twisted her wedding ring, a habit she'd developed when anxious. I need to resolve this, she said finally. I can't keep living in limbo, and I can't put you and Mr. Rollins at risk. Heath watched her, his face solemn. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I need to file for divorce, Nora said, the words both terrifying and liberating. It's possible in cases of cruelty or abandonment. Howard has done both. It won't be easy, Heath warned. Folks will talk, some will judge you harshly. I know, Nora said, straightening her shoulders. But I can't live my life in fear, Heath. I can't keep pretending my marriage is something it's not. Heath nodded slowly. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you need money for a lawyer, consider it an advance on your wages. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Nora saw her future unfolding difficult, uncertain, but filled with possibilities she had never dared imagine. "Thank you," she said simply. Heath stood, offering her his hand. "Come on, let's get back to work. The day's not over yet." Taking his hand, Nora rose, feeling lighter despite the confrontation with Howard. For the first time in years, she was taking control of her life, making her own choices. Whatever came next, she would face it standing tall. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations, paperwork, and gossip that spread through the territory like wildfire. Nora Dalton was divorcing her husband, a scandalous, nearly unprecedented act that set tongues wagging from the saloon to the church pews. Howard fought the divorce with drunken, spiteful energy, alternating between threatening Nora and pleading for her return. When those tactics failed, he resorted to slander, telling anyone who would listen that his wife had been seduced by the wealthy Easterner who'd bought the Jessup place. Through it all, Heath remained a steady presence, neither confirming the rumors nor denying his feelings. He accompanied Nora to town when necessary, stood silently supportive during legal meetings, and ensured she was never alone when Howard might appear. June turned to July, and the heat of summer settled over the land. The foals born that spring grew strong, the vegetable garden Nora had planted thrived, and slowly the ranch took shape as the vision Heath and Rollins had dreamed of. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Nora sat on her cabin porch, mending one of Heath's shirts. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up, expecting to see Heath returning from checking the herd. Instead, Sheriff Bill Harker rode into view, his weathered face serious. "Evening, Mrs. Dalton," he said, dismounting and removing his hat. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all, Sheriff," Nora replied, setting aside her sewing. "What brings you out this way?" Harker approached the porch, turning his hat in his hands, a gesture that immediately put Nora on alert. "It's your husband, madam," he said finally. "There's been an incident." Fear clutched at Nora's heart. "Is Howard hurt?" "He's dead, madam," Harker said gently. "There was a fight at the Silver Dollar last night. Knives were drawn. By the time I got there, it was too late." Nora sat perfectly still, the news washing over her like cold water. Howard dead. The man she had once loved, then feared, now gone forever. "Who?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Man named Flint Russo. Drifter, been in town about a week." Harker shook his head. "Your husband accused him of cheating at cards. Words were exchanged, then steel." Nora pressed a hand to her mouth, a storm of emotions battling within her: shock, grief for what might have been, and a shameful relief that made her hate herself a little. "I'm sorry to bring such news, Mrs. Dalton," Harker continued. "I know things were difficult between you, but still, losing a spouse." "Yes," Nora said automatically. "Thank you for coming yourself, Sheriff." "There's more," Harker said, looking uncomfortable. "The undertaker needs someone to claim the body, make arrangements. And there's the matter of your property. With no will, everything goes to you as his widow." The word widow struck Nora like a physical blow. She was free not through divorce, but through death. The realization was dizzying. "I'll come to town tomorrow," she managed, "for the arrangements." Harker nodded, replacing his hat. "Mr. Wayland around, might be good for you to have company on the ride-in." "He's checking the north herd," Nora said. "Due back any time." As if summoned by their conversation, Heath appeared on the horizon, riding hard toward the cabin. He must have seen the sheriff's horse, for he approached at a gallop, concern evident even at a distance. "Sheriff," he called as he drew near. "Everything all right?" Harker turned. "Evening, Wayland, just bringing Mrs. Dalton some news. Her husband was killed in a fight last night." Heath's eyes immediately sought Nora's, the question in them clear. "Are you all right?" She gave a small nod, not trusting her voice. Heath dismounted, handing his reins to Harker. "Would you mind watering my horse, Sheriff? I'd like a word with Mrs. Dalton." Harker took the reins with a knowing look. "Take your time, I'll see to the animals." He led both horses toward the water trough, giving them privacy. Heath crossed to the porch in long strides, sitting beside Nora on the step. "Nora, what do you need?" The simple question undid her. Tears she hadn't realized she was holding back spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know what I'm feeling," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I'm shocked and sad and guilty because part of me is relieved, and what kind of person does that make me?" Heath took her hands in his touch anchoring her. "A human one," he said firmly. "Howard hurt you, Nora. It's natural to feel relief that the threat is gone. That doesn't mean you wished him dead." Nora leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I have to go to town tomorrow, make arrangements." "I'll go with you," Heath said immediately. "You shouldn't have to face that alone." She nodded against his shoulder, too emotionally exhausted to argue. "And Nora," Heath continued, his voice soft in her ear, "whatever you're feeling, it's all right. There's no right way to grieve or not grieve someone who brought pain into your life." In that moment, with Heath's arms around her and the sky darkening above, Nora understood that the complicated tangle of emotions she felt for Howard Dalton would take time to unravel. But she also understood, with sudden clarity, that she was free to build a new life, one of her own choosing. The funeral was a sparse affair of few curious townsfolk, the bartender from the Silver Dollar, Sheriff Harker, and Nora, dressed in her blue dress for lack of black mourning clothes. Heath stood beside her at the graveside, a silent pillar of support as the preacher spoke generic words over a man he had barely known. Afterward, Nora met with the bank manager about Howard's debts, substantial, and assets, minimal. The ranch was mortgaged to the hilt, the cattle long gone. After settling accounts, she would be left with almost nothing, just the few personal possessions she had already taken, and ironically, Willow, the horse Howard had tried to sell. "You could sell the ranch," the bank manager suggested. "Might fetch enough to clear the debts and give you a fresh start." Nora nodded, signing the papers he pushed across the desk. The ranch had never been a home to her, just a place of disappointment and broken dreams. As they rode back to the Wayland ranch that evening, Heath was uncharacteristically quiet, lost in thought. Only when they reached the creek did he speak. "Nora, I know this is poor timing, with Howard not even cold in his grave," he began, his voice hesitant, "but I need to ask something." Nora looked at him, waiting. "What are your plans now? Will you stay on at the ranch working for us, or will you move on, start fresh somewhere else?" The question was loaded with unspoken meanings. Nora considered it carefully, aware that her answer would shape the course of her future. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been so focused on getting free of Howard, I haven't thought much beyond that." She gazed at the creek, its waters reflecting the setting sun. "I have no family to return to, little money of my own, but I don't want to be dependent on anyone's charity ever again." "It was never charity," Heath said quietly. "Your work has been invaluable to us." Nora smiled at him. "You're kind to say so." "It's the truth." Heath dismounted, then helped Nora down from Willow. Standing close, he searched her face. "Nora, I meant what I said that day by the creek. My feelings haven't changed, but I understand if you need time or if you don't return them." Nora's heart raced. In the weeks since their confession, they had maintained a careful distance, friendly, respectful, but never crossing the line while she was still legally married. "I do return them," she said softly. "But you're right, I need time. This freedom is new and strange. I need to know who I am outside of being Howard's wife before I can consider being anyone else's." Heath nodded, accepting her words without resentment. "Then take the time you need. The job is yours for as long as you want it, with no expectations beyond your duties." He smiled, that dimple appearing in his cheek, "And when, if you're ready for more, I'll be here." The summer passed in a blur of work and healing. Nora sold Howard's ranch to a family moving west from Kansas, using the small profit to pay off his remaining debts and purchase new clothes, a proper saddle for Willow, and books, a luxury she had been denied during her marriage. She continued working at the Wayland ranch, but now as a paid housekeeper and cook, with her own cabin and independence. Her relationship with Heath evolved slowly, naturally shared meals, conversations by the fire, rides across the property to check on the horses. In August, Heath took her to the territorial fair in Helena, where his yearlings won blue ribbons, and Nora marveled at the displays of agricultural abundance and technological wonders. They danced under the stars to fiddle music, Heath's hand warm at her waist, and for the first time, Nora began to imagine a future filled with such moments. September brought the harvest and cattle roundup, the ranch bustling with additional hands hired for the season. Nora cooked for the crew, earning their respect with her hearty meals and no-nonsense attitude when they tracked mud into her clean kitchen. Through it all, Heath courted her with patient determination, not with grand gestures, but with consistent kindness, respect, and appreciation. He brought her wildflowers picked from the meadow, listened intently when she spoke, valued her opinions on ranch matters, and never, ever made her feel less than his equal. By October, as the aspens turned gold and the nights grew crisp, Nora knew her heart. The period of mourning society expected of a widow, even one separated from her husband at his death, was not yet over. But Nora had done her grieving for her marriage long before Howard's death. On a Sunday afternoon, with the first snow dusting the distant mountains, Nora rode Willow to the highest point on the ranch, a gentle rise that afforded views for miles in every direction. Heath had asked her to meet him there, saying he had something to show her. She found him waiting, a picnic spread on a blanket, his chestnut stallion grazing nearby. As she dismounted, she noticed something different in his expression, a nervous energy she hadn't seen before. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming," he said, helping her with Willow's reins. "I had to finish the bread," Nora explained. "What did you want to show me?" Heath gestured to the vista before them. "This, all of this." Nora looked out over the rolling plains, the creek winding like a silver ribbon, the ranch buildings clustered in the valley, the herds of horses dotting the pastures. "It's beautiful," she said, taking in the kingdom he and Rollins had built. "It is," Heath agreed, moving to stand beside her. "But it's missing something important." Nora turned to him, questioning. "A heart," Heath said simply, "a center, someone to make it more than just a business, more than just land and animals." He took her hands in his. "Nora, I love you. I think I've loved you since the day you stood in my yard, asking for your horse back, too proud to beg but determined to fight for what was yours." Nora's breath caught in her throat as Heath continued. "I don't just want you to work for the ranch," he said, his blue eyes intense. "I want you to share it with me, to build something lasting together." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "Nora Dalton, will you marry me?" Inside the box was a ring not ostentatious but beautifully crafted, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "It was my mother's," Heath explained. "I sent for it months ago, hoping that someday I'd have the right to offer it to you." Tears blurred Nora's vision as she looked from the ring to Heath's face, dear, beloved, and as nervous as a schoolboy. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I will marry you, Heath Wayland." The joy that transformed his face was worth every hardship she had endured to reach this moment. Heath slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, his kiss tender and passionate at once. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Heath pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise you this, Nora, you will never again watch someone sell what you love for whiskey. What's yours is yours always." "And what's yours is yours," Nora replied, her heart full. "Except your horse." She smiled impishly. "I believe you once said I could ride that." Heath laughed, the sound echoing across the plains. "Anytime, my love, anytime at all." They were married on Christmas Day, 1878, in the parlor of what was now their home. Rollins gave the bride away, Sheriff Harker served as best man, and the local preacher officiated. Nora wore a new dress of deep blue velvet, with her mother's locket around her neck and wildflowers in her hair. Even in December, a special gift Heath had arranged from a hothouse in Helena. The ranch hands cheered as Heath kissed his bride, and the celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and more food than even 20 hungry cowboys could consume. When the last guest had departed, Heath carried Nora across the threshold of the main house, no longer her workplace, but her home. In their bedroom, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting golden light across the quilt Nora had made during the autumn evenings. "Mrs. Wayland," Heath said, setting her gently on her feet. "Welcome home." "Mr. Wayland," Nora replied, reaching up to touch his face. "I've been home since the day you told me I could ride your horse." Heath's laughter was smothered by her kiss, and as snow fell softly outside, they began the first night of their new life together, a life built on respect, partnership, and love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. Spring 1880 found the Wayland Ranch thriving beyond even Heath's ambitious dreams. The horse breeding program had gained a reputation throughout the territory and beyond, with buyers coming from as far as St. Louis and San Francisco. The original property had been expanded twice, and a crew of permanent hands kept operations running smoothly. Nora, now 7 months pregnant with their first child, supervised the household with calm efficiency. She had hired a young widow from town as helper, taught herself bookkeeping to assist with the ranch accounts, and still found time to maintain her beloved garden, now bursting with early flowers. On a mild April morning, as Nora sat on the porch shelling peas, a rider approached a woman, unusual in these parts. As she drew closer, Nora recognized her as Eleanor Carson, who owned the neighboring ranch with her husband Thomas. "Mrs. Wayland," Eleanor called, dismounting with the ease of someone born to the saddle. "Hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Nora replied, setting aside her bowl. "Come sit. Would you like some lemonade?" Eleanor accepted the offered chair and refreshment gratefully. "I've come with news," she said after taking a long drink. "And a proposition for you and Mr. Wayland." Nora raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Thomas and I are moving back east," Eleanor explained. "His father is ill, the family business needs attention, and truth be told, I miss civilization more than I care to admit." "I'm sorry to hear about Mr. Carson's father," Nora said sincerely. "Will you sell the ranch?" Eleanor nodded. "That's why I'm here. Before we put it on the market officially, we wanted to offer it to you and Heath first. You've been good neighbors, and we know you've been looking to expand your operation." Nora's mind raced with the possibilities. The Carson property adjoined theirs to the East Prime grazing land with reliable water sources and a well-built house that could serve as a foreman's residence. "I'll discuss it with Heath as soon as he returns," she promised. "He's due back from Helena tonight." After Eleanor left, Nora could hardly contain her excitement. When Heath rode in at dusk, she was waiting by the corral, her face glowing. "You look like a woman with a secret," Heath observed, swinging down from his horse and gathering her into his arms for a kiss. "A good one, I hope." "The best," Nora confirmed, and shared Eleanor's visit and offer. Heath's eyes lit up as he considered the opportunity. "It would be perfect timing. The Army contract I secured in Helena means we'll need to expand the breeding program significantly." He placed a hand on Nora's rounded belly. "And with this little one on the way, and hopefully more to follow, we're building for the future now." That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Heath held Nora close, his hand resting protectively over their unborn child. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked softly. "When you walked to my ranch that morning, looking for your horse," Nora shook her head, smiling in the darkness. "I was just hoping to get Willow back. I never dreamed I'd find everything I never knew I wanted." "Everything," Heath teased, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Well," Nora amended, "I did have to settle for riding your horse rather than mine." Heath's laughter was warm against her skin. "Best trade I ever made." Outside, the Montana night was alive with the sounds of their land horses nickering softly in the pasture, the distant howl of coyotes, the rustle of wind through the new leaves. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Nora and Heath Wayland dreamed of the future they were building together, a future born from a moment of desperate courage, a horse trade, and the promise of a ride that had become a journey of a lifetime. In June 1880, Nora gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Grace, after both their mothers. The child had Heath's blue eyes and Nora's determined spirit, evident from her first lusty cry. By her first birthday, little Beth was toddling around the ranch, beloved by everyone from Rollins to the newest stable boy. The Carson property was incorporated seamlessly into the Wayland Ranch, and Heath's Army contracts brought prosperity beyond their expectations. In 1882, they welcomed a son, James, and in 1884, another daughter, Sarah. Through it all, the joys of parenthood, the challenges of running an expanding ranch, the inevitable hardships of life in the territory, their partnership remained unshakable. Heath never forgot the promise he had made that day on the hilltop, and Nora never took for granted the freedom and respect she had found in his love. Sometimes on summer evenings when the work was done and the children asleep, they would ride out together, side by side on their horses, no longer his and hers, but theirs like everything else they had built. And Heath would say, his eyes twinkling with the memory of their beginning, "Ride mine." And Nora would always answer, with love in her heart and laughter in her voice, "Anytime, Cowboy, any time at all."